This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV.com, and today I have a special interview with former NWA and UWF World Class Championship Wrestling star Baby Doll. How are you doing today? Looking as good as always.
I am really well. Thank you very much. This is going to be exciting. Thank you for offering this to me and getting an interview. And most of all, thank you for remembering me.
Oh, well, you've been requested a lot lately, and you were just telling me you have a 5-year-old. Was that a planned pregnancy?
Well, no, it's not really. Well, it's a story, but it's not a long story. It's my husband's grandson, and I guess through circumstances that were beyond our control, the parents decided to be drug addicts and not parents. So for the past 2 years, he's been our little boy. So
Oh,
he's
I see.
ours.
Well, that's sad to hear, but I'm glad that he's under good care now.
He is. I have well, we have like 8 acres and a small farm. And for a little boy, I think that it's going to be like a perfect upbringing. And since Chad and I have both been parents before, and I've got two daughters, and having a little boy is quite an experience.
Your daughter was also in the wrestling business for a while, wasn't she?
She still is. She still wrestles under Samantha Starr. And because of this COVID thing, everything's been kind of put on hold. But I just saw her wrestle down in Greensboro at the first of the year and had some other stuff planned. But yeah, she's still going. My oldest is a musician and my youngest is a wrestler.
How's the lockdown affecting you where you are? Is it as bad as it is up here in Canada?
Oh, the county where I'm in Caldwell County, we have like 53 cases and we have no deaths. Everybody's just kind of really sick and tired of being told what to do because like here where we're at, it's not really affecting us. It's not like up in the Northeast. And I really feel sorry for people that have been affected by it. But a lot of people have to go back to work. We want to work and support our families. And with a death rate of or a recovery rate of almost 99%, unless you're elderly or frail, we need to protect those people. But the rest of us, let us go out to work and support these people.
Are you still working a regular job?
No, since we've had the 5-year old, I've really got, had to. That's my job as a 5-year old. And then
Oh,
my husband cuts steel for a living, and then I still do appearances and different things like that with the wrestling. But mainly having a 5-year old, I think that my priorities have got to be with him and not with a job. I did work with Walmart for 13 years. I had 13 years with them. I'd also worked with AT&T. I worked with Piedmont Airlines. I did plastic extrusion. I've had a lot of different jobs. I wanted to learn a lot about a lot. I even climbed poles for Cox Cable and installed cable for like 2 years. So it's
wow.
been exciting.
Did they ever find you whenever there was shoplifting issues at the Walmart to take care of the thieves or anything like that?
It was funny because, like in Joplin, Missouri, where I started out, they had a rather lax policy with their loss prevention. And I actually dropped a knee on a guy's head because they had got him shoplifting because I liked working overnights. And so they got the guy shoplifting. They hauled him to the back. They were trying to find out who he was. He put his driver's license in his mouth and was chewing on it, which cut his mouth. And the one guy was like, spit it out, spit out, spit. Well, when he said spit it out, he actually spit on the associate. And it was at that time, like, I don't know why, but I actually dropped a knee on his head. Oops.
Uh,
We had
so
some. It's crazy at Walmart, especially working overnights. There were some crazy times there.
yeah, I worked at one actually overnight too many years ago, but the actual store was closed when I was working and it was just like stocking shelves.
Right. No, I worked in 24-hour places, so there was always customers coming in and out. And it's
Yeah,
always
that,
it was crazy because I had guys come in at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I used to like restocking the bake aisle because I figured they paid me to work out. At 2 o'clock in the morning, if you're coming in buying baking soda, you might want to rethink what you're doing in your life right then. And I'd see people like down there, like buying baking soda. It's like, you don't want to do this. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Just go home. Go home. But you can't really say anything, but oh well.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a lot of stories from those days, but you grew up, I guess you were the daughter of a wrestling promoter. So you grew up in the business from a young age.
Right. Both of my parents were wrestlers. My dad's Nick Roberts. He promoted Lubbock, Texas for almost 25 years. And then we had like the weekly wrestling show for almost like 2 decades. It was on Wednesday night at the Fair Park Coliseum. And then we switched over to the Civic Center and was on Friday nights. We had everybody go through there, from like Dick Murdoch, Dusty Rhodes, the Funks, Ricky Romero, Cyclone Negro, Art Nelson, the Super Destroyer, the Sheik, Andre, Flair came through, Harley Race came through. We had a deal like with the NWA where we got the world's champion at least twice a year. It was really, I mean, for someone who absolutely loves wrestling, it was perfect childhood. And then my mom is Lorraine Johnson, Lorraine Roberts, she wrestled with Lorraine Johnson. And then her tag team partner was Penny Banner. So she had all the pretty pictures and had won a bunch of Marilyn Monroe lookalike contests. And it was, for me, because I love professional wrestling so much, it was like perfect childhood.
I heard that you actually had to bring the snake to the ring with the Sheik once. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. When we had the Sheik, he was working for us one summer and had a run against Super Destroyer. And I don't know if he was wrestling a Super Destroyer or Art Nelson. And they had, like, my dad brought in like truckloads full of sand one time for like an Arabian death match. They, but the Sheik wanted to use a snake. So my dad went to one of the local pet stores and would rent a 6-foot boa constrictor that the Sheik would carry down to the ring. And then I'd stand in the corner with the sack. He'd ask for the sack. He'd put the snake in the sack. And then I'd carry the snake back to the dressing room. And then my dad eventually bought the snake for me. I named him Captain Crunch, and I had him for maybe 5 years.
Wow.
It's kind of cool.
Did you feed it live food or was it already dead when you had to feed it?
He ate live food there for maybe the first 4 years. The last year I'd have to kill it for him, but he'd eat squabs. We had a place outside of town that like once every 2 months we'd go buy a baby pigeon for him, a squab. And then he ate like the regular mice and stuff. And he was so tame that I'd kill a mouse and put it on my hand and feed it to him. He'd just come up and eat the mouse out of my hand.
Wow. So what was the Sheik like? He's such a scary guy. Was he keeping kayfabe around you when you were young?
He's very quiet, didn't say very much. He actually would go out to eat, would spend the night at a friend's of mine's house, Keenan Smith, at his mom's house with Cletus, because she worked for, oh my gosh, I want to say South, it wasn't Southwest. I'm trying to think the airline, but she worked for the airlines and would, oh my gosh, what airline did she work with? Anyway, but she would hook up all the boys with flights. Like Terry would call her from Japan and say, I'm stuck. And she would get him back home. And uh, Flair would call, everybody would call Cletus to get out of the jam that they were in with their airline flights. So he would actually stay out there at their house, and then I would pick him up at the airport and drop him off and things like that. But the Sheik was really like really quiet and very to himself. And I remember like the little purple glasses and wore like really expensive clothes. He was very mysterious, is the only way that I can put it. He was very mysterious.
How was business in those days? Was it pretty good overall or was it up and down?
Um, oh my gosh. I would say that, I mean, we had a really good upbringing. I mean, we always had like really good money. We, considering we ran every week, it had to have been profitable because my dad had the concessions for Fair Park. So anything that had a venue in the building, from like soccer to concerts to the fair, weddings, dances, everything, he had the concessions for them. Plus, then we had the weekly wrestling show. We had several thousand people every week and on a weekly basis, plus a TV show. And then Greg Price actually has my dad's books. My dad kept meticulous records of like how many people that we had. Um, I think Fair Park holds like 5,000 people, and we were good for at least, I would say, 4 sellouts during the year where they would build it up, build it up, build it up, and then we'd have the big, huge sellout. And then we had 640 ringside seats that were permanently set up. And they were almost always half full. And so it was good. I would say that yes, it was very profitable.
Did you ever have to drive Andre the Giant around?
Yes, I did. I was Andre actually we were really good friends. Like for just being some bodunk girl in Lubbock, Texas, he was just one of the nicest guys. I got to drive him to like Odessa and back, in Odessa is like 110 miles away. I told him one time that I'd gone to Germany and had drank this buffalo grass vodka, and it was like really, really, really good vodka. And he was, talking to me about Germany and different places that I traveled. So about 2 months after that, I get this weird box at my house, and it was from Frenchie from North Carolina. I'm like, I don't know anyone from North Carolina because I'm like 19, 20 years old. Andre had actually bought a it was 4 bottles of vodka and had sent it to Frenchie and had Frenchie mail it to me. So
Wow,
really, really cool.
that is cool. At what point did your parents start to smarten you up a little bit to the business?
Never did. The One of the craziest stories I have is whenever I had heard that they were looking for a girl for Gino, I had overheard my parents talking, and I had this huge crush on Gino. I mean, I just absolutely adored him. And so in my mind, I was like, maybe me. Why can't I do it? So I stole my dad's little black book, went down to a boyfriend's house, called the Dallas office, and David Manning answered the phone. And I gave David Manning the spiel of like, hey, here you're looking for a girl for Gino. Um, what about me? I'm smart, I'm pretty. Maybe I'd be like what you want. Because at the time they had Sunshine, and I thought whatever could do, I could do. So David was just like, you've got perfect timing. They were just getting ready to go into a meeting upstairs with Fritz. He said, let me run it by him. He said, I'll call you back in a little while. So like 45 minutes later, he called me back. He said, Fritz absolutely loves the idea. He said, we're going to work with him a little bit on what we're going to bring you in as and different things like that. He says, but the only problem is who's going to tell your dad? Oh, okay. Because at the time I was going to school, I was going to be an EMT, I was going to college, I had a job, everything normal. And now I'm going to tell my parents, oh, by the way, I'm going to quit college and move to Dallas and work with Gino. They weren't really thrilled about it, but I went ahead and did anyway. So the first night that I worked, it was Sunday night in San Antonio, Texas at Joe Harry Coliseum. And I had my dressing room. I was getting ready. I knew I was going to be a bodyguard for Gino, and I needed to be this big, badass girl and look like I could kick some ass. When they came in, it was like Gary Hart and Ken Mantell and David Manning, I want to say, and Gino, and I think Stella was in there. There was like 5 or 6 of them came in my dressing room, and they went over the finish of what they had me do. I was supposed to go down the aisleway, hit Stella over the head with like this loaded. Gary Hart was there because he gave me the sock. Hit her over the head with a sock, beat her up, go to the ring. Then Gina was actually wrestling against Mike. There was like 4 or 5 things that I had to do in the match, like had to be on point, grab a foot, jump up on the apron, just different things. They said, do you have it? I was like, yeah. And they said, you don't have any problem with it? And I was like, no. And they said, what's the main thing we want you to do? And I said, look like I could kick somebody's ass. And they were like, that's it. And they left. And I'm going, oh my God. That's how they actually smartened me up. I had no clue until that night how it was done. And I never let anybody know. I just kind of went along with it like, okay, whatever y'all want to do. And just nobody ever knew that I wasn't smart until that night.
So you thought
Kayfabe was king.
you were entering into a shoot, you thought.
I kind of knew, like, you're not in the business for like 20 years and not have an idea that something's going on, but you don't know how precise and what a dance it truly is. And that's what it is. It's a magical dance, and I was very fortunate that I don't think I've ever goofed up a finish or a spot. I know I've been late on a couple of ones because I couldn't get through the crowd, but I've never absolutely like goofed up a spot.
And how did Gino treat you? Was he open to having you as a valet?
He really liked the idea because of the angle with Stella back then. Like the guys didn't touch the girls at all. That was just totally taboo. And then you really didn't want to have a guy like beating up a girl at this time. So then bringing me in took the heat off from him because he could like sick me on Stella May and we could get heat that way without becoming like a total asshole and then losing the crowd, because then I would get the heat and not him. So it worked out really well. Plus, and we'd been friends since I was like 15, 16 years old. And he knew that I had a huge crush on him. And he was really good because he could have really taken advantage of the situation and didn't. It was very strictly professional. We only made one road trip together. We rode to like Abilene, and then I rode back with some other people. But, Gino was kind of mysterious in his own way. And since I saw the dark side of the ring, I kind of understand more now of like what he was going through and that like that second life that he was leading. Shoot, I didn't even know he was married and had kids whenever I was working with him. He was that, just the business was one part of his life and then his other life was another life.
So the rumors that you dated him, those are just rumor and innuendo.
Oh, I never, Gino and I never kissed. We never, no, nothing. No,
So you never saw that the side of the dark side of the ring with the drugs and that underworld side of him that he
no.
was.
I know that he had like his friend that was down in Houston. He had the bar that he went to, and there was always kind of the deal of like he was doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. And I thought it was more gambling. I didn't know it was so much the drugs. I didn't know that he was doing the cocaine like what he did. No.
When I interviewed Jake Roberts, he alluded that Gino had like some connections to the gay community. Did you ever see anything like that?
Mm, that's a first on me. And what's cool is Jake and I started in Dallas at the same time. Jake actually opened up the door to the TV studio on a Friday, the very first time that we went and did TV together.
And for Gino's death, what was your reaction when he passed away? And at the time, did you think it was just an overdose, or was there a controversial rumor around during those
Oh,
days?
there was a lot of controversy about it, and it was like the amount of cocaine that they said that was in his system, and everybody, because I've never done coke. I've done a lot of other stuff, but I've never done coke, and um, kind of stayed away from that. I saw with like some of the guys working how much money they spent and what a waste it was. And I know, like with my personality, that if I tried it, I would probably like really, really like it. And I knew that that wasn't like the road I wanted to go down. But like with Gino, whenever I heard that, it seemed very odd that he was by himself and the whole situation of the whole deal, like in my mind, he didn't die by himself and he died like with some really, really bad people. And that makes me sad, that it was that situation. When the dark side of the ring came out and through talking with other people that were with him and in that situation, it just seems like he was just at the wrong place at the wrong, I don't want to say the wrong place at the wrong time. He'd gotten involved with the wrong people and that he was expendable and they got rid of him.
Any favorite memory of Gino?
Oh my gosh, how happy he was at the Cotton Bowl whenever they had won the six-man titles because he had like three title belts on. And that, how happy with like Chris and Jake and Gino and myself, that was like super fun because like everybody was happy and it was like we were really champions and we were at the Cotton Bowl and it was fun. It was a really, really fun day.
How did you get along with Chris?
Chris was awesome. Chris was I'd driven him around a lot, like whenever I was like 16, 17 years old, because a lot of the guys I knew from my dad's promotion, and I had driven them around, like going to the gym or the hotel or taking them out to eat after the show. And they were like my buddies. They were like big brothers to me. So Chris was always just a really good guy, and we talked about soccer because I was in soccer in high school and things like that. And he knew more about soccer than like Von Erichs, because the Von Erichs didn't play soccer and Chris had played soccer. And it was just different things. He was cool. He was really cool.
Did you have much contact with Jeannie, Chris's former partner, who I think she also managed, but I don't think it was at the same time. Don't know. I don't remember if it was the same time as you or not.
It was right after. It was about a year after I worked as, and she worked as Lady Blossom, and she came in, and I met her at a fan fest in Charlotte, and we have just clicked, and we were like best friends like from the start, because she knew people that I knew. She had done stuff that I did, and we still like talk back and forth on Facebook and send pictures, and she is an absolute treasure. I am so glad I got to meet her.
Now, for the Von Erichs themselves, what were they like to work with?
Super awesome. Carrie actually helped me with because I was throwing shot and discus in high school. And I know that Cornette says that I was like the shot put champion of Lubbock. Actually, I was better at discus. I actually set my high school record for discus at my senior year of high school. And that was because Carrie helped me with my throw and my delivery of just tilting my hand and just getting, with like my ring finger and my pinky finger, just doing a little twist. And it actually helped me get like 10 feet further on my throw. And you wouldn't think that something like that would matter. And it did. And he helped me with that. And we went to the gym a lot. And it's funny because Kevin to this day will proclaim what a great athlete I was, because I would whip those boys in racquetball. They could not beat me in racquetball. And it was fun playing them, but then they kind of got spoiled sports, because after you beat them 4 or 5 times, they don't want to play with you no more.
Now, did you notice any of the issues they're known for, or was it similar to Gino, where you never saw that side of them?
Actually, with the Von Erichs, it was more prevalent because they'd no show a lot. I mean, we'd have them booked for events and then they wouldn't show up. And I actually saw Kerry lace up his head. This was like when the Walkmans came out. He actually laced up his headphones into his boots, and then when he went to go raise up, the headphones came down, and he just kind of laughed and like, "Oh God, I got to do this over again." Had to relace his boots up. I saw it more, and especially with Kerry. I didn't see it with Kevin, but I did with Chris and Mike, and especially with Kerry, I did.
Now, there was some controversy when WWE put them in the Hall of Fame. Some people were saying that Mike and Chris might not belong in the Hall of Fame, but I know you worked with Mike. Do you feel it was good to put the whole family in at once, or should they have only put the ones that were more successful in the WWE Hall of Fame?
I don't see how, like, if you wanted to put Kevin and Kerry in there, that they would have not done it if they didn't include the whole family. That's how tight those brothers were, that it was one for all and all for one. And if you were just going to put Kerry in there, I can't see Kerry just going by himself. Kerry would have wanted everybody in there with him. They wouldn't have done it unless everybody did it all.
And you mentioned Gary Hart gave you your first instructions for the ring. He's known as a booking genius. What were your thoughts on him?
Gary was just really, he was cool to be around, like for the older, one of the older guys and stuff. He was always just really laid back and slow talked, and just really, like his wife's name, I think, was like Twinkles, and he had like 2 boys, and he loved talking about his 2 boys. And Gary's just a really, really good guy. And he's one of the ones that I really, truly miss, because he's like one of those guys, whenever you saw him on the road, it was like, "Oh, Gary's here. This is great." And you'd always get some stories. And he's one of the guys I really miss.
And you mentioned Jake was the first guy that opened the door for you. What were your thoughts of Jake?
Oh my gosh. Jake, I learned so much from, because I wasn't traveling with Gino, because Gino kind of had his own thing going, and he'd get to the show and then leave. And, we weren't really like partnered up, and I'd have to find my way to the towns myself. Jake was really cool because we both smoked a lot of pot. And it was like we were instant friends, instant buddies, instant just we always hung around each other, and I learned so much from him, just like from doing road trips of like learning how to do promos and learning how to present myself, and just he was the one that basically smartened me up to the business and made me who I was whenever I went to Crockett, because I was so green going with Dallas, because I only worked 2.5 months with Dallas, and then I went in with Crockett, that I took everything that I learned with Jake and made Baby Doll out of that, and it worked. And the heel sense of it and the look, and just Jake had a way of just walking to the ring, people hated him. And I wanted just to absorb that and copy it. And I tried my best to do that. And I think it worked.
I tried to find video of this, but a fan sent me a question for you. They said that they saw a makeout scene with you and Jake, and it aired on TV, I guess. And they said to this day it was the most realistic makeout scene they'd ever seen in wrestling. Do you have any recollection of this?
Oh my gosh. He would like pull my hair. See, I don't remember that. Like when we were doing the 6-man, or when he was tagging with Gino and stuff, he would like pull my hair back, and he might have kissed me, but it wasn't the only time that I really like made out with someone was with Magnum TA, with a kiss like right before Starcade. That's the only one that I don't remember like making out with Jake. I really, because he was married. I don't remember that.
Well, there is no evidence on the internet. I tried to find what this fan was talking about, so maybe they
Maybe
imagined
he was
it.
mistaking me with like Magnum. Like maybe he was mistaking a Magnum for Jake. But no, I don't remember. It's because I remember him like pulling my hair back and kind of giving the look and stuff. But I don't even remember. I don't even remember kissing Jake ever. So
Now, he has said a few times that the guitar shot from the Honky Tonk Man is what really got him into drugs. But you're saying even back in those days, he would smoke pot once in a while. But was he really into drugs back then, or do you think that happened later on?
he smoked pot and drank beer. So I mean that's not so bad. I know like with the shot with the guitar, a lot of times they wouldn't remove the strings. Like you're supposed to like gimmick the guitar, so that when you hit somebody it like shatters. And I think with Jake that they didn't gimmick it at all. He actually got hit with the guitar, and it hurt him, and it hurt his neck like really, really bad. So
At what
I mean it
point
could
did
happen.
at what point did you meet Sam Houston, who's obviously Jake's brother, and I guess you ended up dating him and marrying him?
The first time I met Sam was like whenever we were working with Crockett. And he was just kind of some young kid, and he was doing jobs and kind of coming up in the whole thing. And I was more focused on what I was doing rather than the other boys. It wasn't until I was in Ocean City, Maryland, that I got a call from Jake, because I was actually fooling around with a married guy, and he had found out about it, and he was just like, Nick, this isn't what you want to do. You don't want to get that type of reputation. He says, why don't you check out my brother? My brother's a really good guy, and just hang out with him. Quit hanging around with married guys. Go hang out with a younger guy your own age. Okay, so then Sam and I started talking, and it wasn't anything until when Dusty won me for the 30 days with Tully at the Great American Bash in 1985. Well, Magnum had a two-seater car. He had the Porsche, and Dusty had the two-seater Mercedes. Well, when I had to do the 30 days with Dusty, they wanted to keep the angle going and for everything to be real for the fans. So I couldn't ride with them. So Dusty had Sam drive me to all the shows. And then I'd kind of have a bodyguard and someone watching out for me and everything good. Well, during the 30 days and just hanging out, we really hit it off. And we were like, wow, this is kind of cool. And you're kind of cool. And maybe we should start seeing each other. And after the 30-day deal, he'd come over to my house and I'd cook for him and we'd hang out. And A year from the very first day that we kissed, we got married.
Wow.
So it was Dusty's fault. He put us together in the first place and then got mad because we hooked up. It was his fault.
Did you know Tully at all before you went over to Crockett?
Oh yeah, because Tully was Gino's tag team partner in Texas. They were the dynamic duo, and I had known Tully. Shoot, I might have been 14, 15 when he was going to West Texas State. He was a DJ on the weekends. He was one of their quarterbacks for the West Texas State football team. Shoot, I might have known Tully before I knew Gino.
Interesting. What was he like as a person outside the ring?
Just exactly like what you see on TV. Just Tully is Tully. Either you like him and you get along with that personality, or he grates you the wrong way and you're like, oh, okay. But Tully and I always got along really well together, and he treated me like gold. And shoot, we made a ton of money, and he made sure that whatever he got, I got, and everything was equal. And like no one shined, no one shine was better than the other ones. So it really worked. I am so fortunate that Dusty put me with him. Just the stars lined up for both of us.
What's the story about the Marine incident with Tully, where you, I guess, beat up some Marines?
It wasn't a Marine. It was a sailor. It was some guy that was in the Navy. We had, oh my gosh, this was in Hampton, Virginia. We had done a tag team with Abdullah against Magnum and Dusty. And you could tell at the scope that, no, that was Norfolk scope. Hampton was a circle building. Anyway, so when we went to the ring, you could just tell that the people were just, they wanted blood, they wanted guts, they wanted to kill us. There was a lot of heat. I was like standing at the end of the apron, and I saw something come out like from the very top of the building. You know how you could have the very hard, like the nosebleed seats, like something came sailing, and I'm like watching it. A Jack Daniels bottle hit the ring post right next to me and just shattered. Now I'm like, holy fuck, this is going to be good. So they had their match. Um, the match was over with. I can't remember who went over, but there was a lot of heat. Abdullah was bleeding. Abdullah left us, and so he was already back to the dressing room by the time we had just cleared the first row ringside. So we're headed back, and I'm in front of Tully, and I'd just gotten past ringside when someone hit me on my chest. And I mean, they hit me like hard. And I looked down, and it had actually popped the skin open on my chest. And I looked down, and I was like, I'm bleeding. I'm really bleeding. And I look back, and Tully's just waylaying on this guy, like, don't you ever hit her. Don't you ever hit her. She's my 10. She's mine. Don't you ever. Well, then I got pissed, and I knocked the dog crap out of that. They had to actually pull me off of the guy. And from what I know, like the MPs came down and got him. And I'm not sure if he got kicked out of the service, but I had heard that they actually discharged him for hitting a woman in public, like what he did.
Wow. What was it
Oh,
like?
I beat the crap out of him. I've never beaten somebody so hard in all my life.
What was it like being a heel in those days when a lot of people believed?
Loved it. I like being a heel better than I like being a baby face, because a baby face, you always had to wear makeup, you always had to be pretty, you always, like you couldn't just throw on glasses and go to the store, because then it seemed like they were disappointed that you weren't what you were on TV. But with a heel, you could actually like put on sunglasses and shop at 2:00 in the morning at Harris Teeter or wherever and get away with it. Well, and then you didn't have to be like fake and nice all the time, and you could just be whoever you were. And then for me, I'm so not baby doll. That's what's so funny is I'm just, because it really is a character. And for me to be a heel, I couldn't believe that thousands of people actually hated me without knowing who I was. They just went by what they saw on TV. And that was so intriguing to me, that just doing little tiny things would just absolutely piss people off. And I love that.
Did you ever have any issues when you were by yourself shopping or anything where a fan confronted you based on your character?
Um, n- Not confronted me. The first time that I knew like I was famous, I was shopping like late night at Harris Teeter or one of the stores there in Dallas, and just going up and down the aisles because I had some time of just shopping for whatever I wanted. And a couple were coming towards me, and I could recognize by the look in their face like they knew who I was. So I was like, all right. So then they went around the aisle, and then you could hear, that's her, that's that chick from TV, that's that wrestler chick. So I was like, ha ha ha, they recognized me, and I was so happy. And then I looked down in my cart, and I've got some Cheetos and tampons. And I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be famous, I need something else in my cart besides Cheetos and tampons. So I went and put some other stuff in my cart. But that was like the one time that, I actually, had kind of the famous thing of like being recognized. Otherwise, it was all kind of the same thing of, like getting autographs and signing stuff. And still to this day, that's so cool. That is awesome.
And we know the male wrestlers in the 80s in particular had a lot of groupies and so forth. Was it the same with the female? Did you have a lot of men that were constantly trying to ask you out or approach you?
No, because of my character. I had a lot of guys in prison write me, which was odd. And especially when the deal with Cornette and the tennis racket, I got a lot of letters that said that whenever they got out, they would take care of Cornette. But see, it was bad because I don't know how to put this. I had the reputation of being like Tully's girl. And then I had the reputation of being Dusty's girl. And then I had the reputation of being Flair's girl. And it seemed like I was being tossed around to everybody, and everybody thought that I was screwing around with everybody, when in fact I was like hiding in my room, checking under aliases and hoping that the wives weren't thinking that I was fooling around with anybody whenever I wasn't. I mean, I wanted to have the reputation of being like a really good girl because my dad was in the business, my mom was in the business. I didn't want anything getting back to them that would disrespect anything that they had done, because my dad's got a really good reputation, my mom's got a really good reputation. I didn't want anyone going back to my dad and going, hey, you need to know what your girl is doing. And just with TV and everybody thinking that I was fooling around with anybody, then who would want to be with that? So I was pretty much by myself, to tell you the truth.
So all the fans wanted me to ask you this. So was there any truth that you ever dated Flair, Tully, or Dusty?
No, Dusty was married, and I totally respected him, and we were like super good friends. And he called me Marilyn, and we had a really good close relationship because he knew that I was money, and he also really liked me and just really as a person liked me. Um, it was really cool whenever I saw Michelle at a fan fest, and when they were inducting him into like the Hall of Heroes, that she pulled me to the side and hugged my neck and said that you were Dusty's favorite. He always said that you were his favorite. And for a wife to pull me over to the side and give me that compliment, that was heaven right there. I mean, I have never gotten a better compliment than that. Tully and I kissed twice, and that was on the video. Otherwise, he had a lot of girls, and I wasn't going to be part of a lot of girls. And then we also had a talk whenever we first did the video, where I flew in on the Learjet and he picked me up in the limo, that it was going to be strictly business, that no matter what, that it was business, that it was going to be successful that way. And if we went any other direction, it wouldn't have worked, and that jealousy would be involved, and that if it was going to work, we had to keep it separate. And we both understood. So it was fine. And then Flair, oh my God, no. I mean, Flair had girls 2 and 3 every night, every day. I wasn't going to be a part of that. No, no, thank you. And Flair, I'd known Flair since I was like 12 years old. There was no way. And he just got married to Beth and was having babies, and shoot, no, no, thank you.
What do you think about Flair's claim about the 10,000 women I mean, you were around him. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it was not unusual. And Flair's not the only one. There were several guys out there that they would have a girl in the morning, a girl in the afternoon, and another girl before they went to bed. It was ridiculous for some of those guys. And they were addicts at it because um if one is great, then 100 is even better. And they were all out doing each other, and it was funny and sad at the same time. But what
Were
was worse was that the girls that put up with it, they girls would actually lay in front of the guys, like in the bar, like, please do me right here, do me right here. And I'm just going, you're going to regret this 10 years from now. But oh well.
so it was a matter of the girls throwing themselves at the wrestlers more than the wrestlers being great pickup artists, I guess.
Some of them had some good lines, but most of the time it was just women that were desperate for attention, women that had seen someone on TV that they wanted to have that memory of, like, going back to their secretarial job for the rest of the week, having that experience of that weekend. And like, yeah, I was with him. And it was for someone from that lived rather a sheltered life in Lubbock, Texas, it was a rather eye-opening experience.
Why do you think it's not like that as much anymore? You never hear those stories anymore. It's much more rare.
I think the internet, I think accountability before, like we were like, let's say we were in Roanoke on Sunday, then we were Greenville on Monday, and Spartanburg on Tuesday, and Raleigh on Wednesday, and Norfolk on Thursday, and Richmond on Friday, and then Atlanta TV. It was like we were always 200 miles away the next day, and another 200 miles. And it might be a month or two before we got back to where we were before, and maybe you weren't on the same card, so there wasn't the accountability. And it wasn't like you had the internet where everybody's talking and everybody knew everybody's business. It was very shaded. And it was kind of cool, like when you drove up to the building and all the girls were there, and when you drove up to the hotel, all the girls were there, and there was another set of girls, and then there were girls. This was before AIDS and the whole sexual transmitted diseases. And I think gonorrhea might have been the worst thing that you could have gotten. And nobody worried about it. It was definitely a different time.
How did the men treat you overall backstage? Were they pretty respectful, or did you have to deal with some harassment?
There was I always thought that how I was going to be treated was how I treated myself. If I was like some of the other girls that would get dressed in front of the guys and just hang out in the dressing room, then you kind of ask for what you're going to get. I always tried to have like my own dressing room. If I had to share a dressing room with the guys, I got a chair and I faced a corner and I read my book and I always looked down at the ground. Um, I was very respectful of myself. Plus, then I had the reputation with my dad, and like with his promotion, and like he was really respected, so then I was really respected. So I really didn't have any problem at all. Everybody was very, very cool to me, and I appreciated that. But then I look at how I acted, and that's how they treated me.
What did you think about working with Sunshine?
Absolute dream. She was so pretty. Oh my gosh. My dad had told me one time, he says, if you ever want to know what's going on with a match, just look at her face. And everybody kind of called her face because she just had that beautiful face, and you could tell what was going on with a match just by looking at her. And I copied everything from her. She was really, really an inspiration to me. And how to sell a match was, you just looked at her.
And what about Missy Hyatt?
Everybody wanted to be Missy. She's so pretty. I was so jealous of her. When she got the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, like with a t-shirt and the boots and the hot pants and stuff, I was just like, she's Missy was like, like we have Baby Doll, then you have like Missy, which was like Baby Doll 2.0. It was like the upgraded version. She was great, and she was a great heel. and she did well with the boys, and we're like really close friends to this day. And she'd come over to eat at my house with Eddie Gilbert, and I was actually at her wedding with Eddie and Missy when they had it on Halloween. They lived right down the road from us in Dallas. We actually lived in Euless. We were all living in the Dallas area. She just lived like right down the road from me.
And what about Precious?
She's so cool. Jimmy and Patty, really good friends of ours when we lived in Charlotte. When I actually left Sam because he was cheating on me, and I just had our daughter, and I just had enough, and I was going to go back to Lubbock, and took everything that I could, I actually spent the night at their house before I hit the road and went to Lubbock.
Okay. And Dark Journey is another one you're always associated with.
Journey's really cool. I don't want to say I felt sorry for Journey, but it seemed like she was just thrown into the mix of something that she had no clue what was going on. And she did so well, considering that she wasn't in the wrestling business. She really didn't know anything about wrestling when Slater went and got her and brought her in. We traveled a lot when we worked with UWF or with Mid-South with Bill Watts, because she was traveling a lot with Grizz and Sam and myself. And she is funny. I mean, there's not a girl out there that's much more hilarious than she is. She's got.
Oh, your sound stopped.
Okay, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
now I can hear you again. Sorry, it cut off for like 10 seconds. Your voice. Oh, now it's cut off again.
I
There's
don't
something.
know.
Hmm. Say
Hold on.
something again. It,
I don't know
it's
what to
like the
tell you.
volume. It's like your volume became lower.
All right, how's that? Is that better?
That's good now. Yeah.
Okay. Um, well, I was going to say with Journey, we were in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we went to like some really quirky little city markets, and she bought a purse that was made out of a possum. They had taken a possum and had curled it up, and she bought a purse out of that, and I thought that was so cool.
Did she ever tell you the true story about what happened with her and Sting and the Dick Slater incident that came out of that?
I don't think so. No, I know that she had really gotten her right before I left. She had hurt her back. Something had happened in the match, and I don't really remember quite what happened. But she had hurt her back, and like nobody would help her. And I felt so sorry. Like, here's this girl, like she's one of us. Why aren't you guys helping her? And I thought that that was like a really bad way to treat someone. And I tried to be there for her. I really did.
I see. And what about the Road Warriors? They're the feature episode of Dark Side of the Ring this week. Did you have any experiences with them over the years?
I did some of the 6-man tags with the Great American Bash against Cornette and Midnight Express. Um, it's kind of like, have you ever seen the movie Spinal Tap, where it's like, why do you want to turn it up to 11? Because you can turn it up to 11. And that's like the way Hawk and Animal were. If you could turn it up to 10, why? Why not turn it up to 15? That's the way they were. They just wanted more out of life. They wanted more out of everything. And they were the Road Warriors. I mean, that was it. There was no doubt that they were going to kick your ass.
Did you ever witness any behind the scenes fights or anything in your time in wrestling?
I'm trying to think. No, but there was a rib where Flair got Arn whenever Arn was first coming into Crockett. Everybody kind of knew Arn. I didn't know Arn, but the first time that he worked in Charlotte, and this is not a fighting story. I can't
Well,
remember
ribs,
anybody
people
fighting.
like to hear the ribs too.
Okay, the ribs. Really and truly, I can't remember anybody fighting, to tell you the. Now I do. Oh well, I do want to say that Manny Fernandez and Tully had a lot of heat. There something had happened with the two of them where you really couldn't have the two of them in the room, because they'd start calling each other names and throwing stuff down, and you just knew that they were going to fight anytime. So there was some heat between Manny and Tully, but I never actually saw them like actually fight. But anyway, the really cool story was Arn had just started in Crockett, and this was his first time in Charlotte, sold out like Sunday afternoon show. Everybody's like really happy. They're all getting dressed. Police officers come in the dressing room and ask for Marty Lundy. And we're all like, Marty, who's Marty Lundy? And Arn's like lacing up his boots, and he's like, that's me. And he says, we need to talk to you. And Arn's like, really? What about? And they said, we have a situation with you and an underage girl in someplace in Georgia. And I like, all right, well, let's go outside and talk about it. Well, you can hear Arn and the police officers outside the door, and they're like talking, and then it gets louder, and then it gets louder, and then they're arguing, and they're like, Mr. Lundy, we're going to have to arrest you at this time because you had sex with an underage girl. You knew that she was underage, and that we don't appreciate that here in North Carolina, and they certainly don't appreciate it down there in Georgia, and someone else will get your stuff. And they actually handcuffed him, and Arn's like, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't know it. And I didn't know. And she said she was 19, or it was like everything. And we're like owls in the dressing room, like, okay, they're arresting. Okay, what did he do? Then all of a sudden you hear this, Flair, I'm going to get you. I swear to God, I'm going to get you. Flair had set up everything. Flair had found out that Arn had been with this girl, and I guess she looked older, but she really wasn't underage. The whole thing was she wasn't underage. But he had the police in on it and had him arrest him and everything in front of everybody. Had Arn just hook, line, and sinker, thinking that he was going to go to jail, that he'd lost his job, that the big moment in his life that he'd been wanting forever, to be the superstar with Crockett, was going to end because of something dumb he'd done like 2 years before. And it was really funny. And what was funny was I remember everybody in the dressing room just sitting there like, I want to say like owls, because their eyes were like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And that's not saying a peep, because we want to hear what's going on the other side. So Flair got Arn really good that day.
Now, when they came up with the idea to have Dusty slap you, how did they present that to you?
Just as part of heat, because I had just started with Crockett, and I don't think I'd been working for him maybe 2 or 3 months, and they just wanted to really put it over, like, because I was getting up in everybody's faces and I was slapping everybody at TV, and Tully would actually like put their heads through the ropes, and I'd smack them, and I'd smack them. I mean, there was no holding back. I mean, you couldn't, because number one, I didn't know how to work. And number two, if you kind of halfway do it, then they don't think it's real. And it seemed like the harder I hit them, the more heat I got. And what was funny was some guys would say, hit me really hard, because then I'll get sympathy from my girlfriend later. Okay, dude, whatever you say. But Dusty was actually afraid that when he hit me, that it would turn him heel. He was actually surprised that women were wanting him to hit me again. If you watch the tape of like when he smacks me and I'm over in the corner, I'm selling it, that the people are actually wanting Dusty to beat the crap out of me. And I think that's what threw them all for a loop, because they had no idea that the people were going to react so violently towards me, that they wanted Dusty just to smack me again, which is really kind of weird. But oh well, I had heat.
Now, what was the difference on the opposite end when Tully slapped you?
It was, you had everyone, it felt like everyone in the stands, because I believe that happened in Greensboro, were wanting to come and get Tully. It was like all of a sudden, everybody, like, Tully went from being a heel like this to off the scale being a heel. And when Dusty came out and saved me and everything, it was like a complete 180. But if you look at the buildup of it, I mean, it was like 2 against 1. It was JJ and Tully against me, and I was defending myself, and Tully wouldn't listen to me, and I'm just like, I didn't do anything. It was JJ gave me the plane ticket, and it's really crazy to watch that now, because there's no scripts, there's no, okay, you've got to say this, and this, and this. It was just a very basic outline of what they give you, of what you're supposed to say. And I look at that now and it's just like, wow, I feel sorry for myself defending trying to defend my stance of like, well, they gave me the ticket to Puerto Rico. Why wasn't I supposed to go if you gave me the ticket? And then, no, you're a liar. And, it seems so real even today. And now to think that, with everything being so scripted and everybody having to say exactly what somebody else is telling you to, it wouldn't have worked.
Which slap hurt the most?
Oh, Tully. Oh my Lord. I didn't feel the one with Dusty. Tully actually hit me so hard that I had earrings and the earring punctured the back of my skin on my head, on my cranium back here. He hit me so hard.
Were you already dating Sam by that point?
Oh yeah. We've been we've been together like 6 months by then because we started dating in August and this was like in January maybe of 86.
What did he think about that? I guess it's just part of the show.
I look back and Sam in all of his good heartedness, was looking out for me because I was kind of like his girl. But then you have to look at I have to be the character. You can't be telling me what to do. And the whole I mean he was mad, and he was mad at like half the shit I did, but he got over it. Um I shouldn't have listened to him as much as I did, but he was kind of like my boyfriend and he was in the business and he was smart and different things like this. But I should have let myself be me more rather than listening to like my boyfriend, which, oh, well, I was young and in love and you do stupid stuff. But I wouldn't really trade anything that I did because I did get two beautiful children out of it. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. But Sam didn't like a lot of things that they did with me, to tell you the truth, because he didn't like the image of them. Like I had the image of like at the time, everybody thought I was fooling around with Tully, and then everybody thought I was fooling around with Dusty, and then a lot of the stuff that Dusty said made people believe that we were fooling around when we weren't, and a lot of the stuff that Flair said, about Space Mountain and the whole thing made them think that I was fooling around with Flair. So I've got this reputation of like fooling around with everybody, and I can kind of see it from his point of view, but then when you look at it as professional wrestling and it's all a work, but back then nobody thought it was a work. Everybody thought it was real. So what they didn't know, right? What they didn't know.
How did you get along with his father, Grizzly? Because Jake has said some stories about Grizzly, and he's had a mixed reputation over the years.
Grizz always treated me like really, really well. A lot of respect. I never. I know that the rumors and the whole reputation of like Grizz, and then whenever I first started dating Sam, Tully said, well, how old are you? And I think it was like 22, 23. I told him like 23 or 24. He says, oh, you're too old. You're okay. His dad won't want you. And at the time I didn't get it, but then now I do get it. I saw some strange stuff, but I never saw anything that was any weirder than anything else that I'd seen.
What was the craziest Ric Flair moment you saw over the years?
Him buying $70 socks at the shoe store. We went to Atlanta to go. We were after TV one day. He went to go buy some shoes. And Flair's not one of those that you just go buy shoes off the rack. He had to go pick out the skins and the whole thing and ordered a couple of pairs of shoes. And they were like seven, eight, I think like $700 and $900 pairs of shoes that he'd pick up in like 2 weeks. Well, while he was there, he bought socks at $70 a pair, and he bought 5 pairs of socks at $70 a pair for socks.
Wow. Was there ever any talk of you managing the Horsemen? I know they already had JJ, but maybe have you there as another manager or valet?
Well, I had done the run with Dusty, and then I was going to go with Flair, and I think in their mind they thought that since I'd gotten married to Sam, that if they put me with Flair, I would choose Flair over Sam, and that wrestling would be more important than my marriage. And then I told him that I wanted to go to Kansas City because Sam was in Kansas City, that they were going to ship him to there. And it kind of let the air out of everybody's bubble that I would rather be with Sam and be married than be with Flair and be a superstar. I look at it as a blessing now because trying to keep up with Flair and trying to keep up with that lifestyle, I don't know if I could have survived it. I really don't. I'm kind of glad I did what I did.
Was Flair pretty much an alcohol guy, or was he go into anything else?
The only thing I ever saw, Flair did a lot of coffee and a lot of alcohol, but that was it. I never saw him do anything ever, 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 ever. He would, I swear, I never saw the guy sleep. I mean, he'd be drinking until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Then he'd be the first one in the hotel lobby talking to the chick behind the desk, drinking a cup of coffee and eating a tuna fish sandwich, and would go the full day. And I'd swear in the 2 years I traveled with him, I never saw him sleep the whole time. And I never saw him do anything else except for coffee and beer and a lot of vodka.
Wow. Now there was a angle in, I guess, December '85 where I guess there was going to be something between you, JJ Dillon, and Buddy Landell, but Landell got fired. Do you have any recollection of that?
Yeah, this was like right before they put me with Dusty. They were going to actually put me with Landell, and then Landell was going to have a run with Flair for the belt. And Landell, because of his weaknesses, went on like a 2 week bender on cocaine. And the two times that I saw him, he looked like he was about to die. He was like just to the point of he just did enough drugs and whatever else to where he was still conscious and his brain was still going. But if he'd done anything else, his brain would have exploded. It was it was intriguing and sad at the same time because you're actually seeing someone kill themselves. And then he disappeared for like 2 weeks and nobody knew where he was. And he missed TVs and the whole thing. And Dusty was just like, fuck it. If he doesn't want a job, he ain't got a job. And that's when they did the deal where Dusty put me with him instead. And that worked out. I mean, that was a lot of fun. And I'm glad that it worked out with Dusty rather than Landau.
I've heard a bunch of people say that Landell actually could have been a big star if it wasn't for his demons.
Probably so. I mean, because he had made a lot of money, like in Mid South and Tennessee and wherever he went, he got over. It was just that he liked to do other things other than wrestle more, and it really got him in trouble. It really did.
Why did they pair you with the Warlord? That seemed like an unusual pairing.
To get him over, just to have him because he was so green, and to have him go out with someone, and to go out with the what like with the Kiss song War Machine, and I got to dress up and do kind of the little badass thing, and it was mainly I think Dusty did it so that we go, hey, Baby Doll's with him, we better watch him. And it worked. I mean, if you just put him out there by himself, it would just been like another big guy. But to put me with him made people watch because of everybody else that I'd already been with.
Did you travel with Warlord at all during that time?
I didn't travel with him. He was on the plane a couple of times, and then he had a little. It's crazy thing. He had a little Fiero car, like the little red, like the tiny, tiny little Fiero. And to see this big, huge 6'6", 360-pound man come out of this little Fiero was hilarious. We flew a lot together. I always was kind of freaked out because he'd done so much like roids and stuff that he wouldn't actually sleep. And when he would sleep, he'd like jerk the whole time. His muscles were still contracting when he was sleeping.
Wow. And Larry Sabisco, how did you like working with him?
He was cool. He was laid back, and we got together, got along better outside of the ring than I think in the ring. I mean, for us to be paired up, it just didn't. We just did not click. It just did not, because with his style and everything, it just didn't work.
What was up with the whole Dusty envelope angle that kind of never went anywhere?
I'm I'm not I'm not quite sure where they were going with that because I've heard, several stories of like which way they were going to go with it. And it was just starting to catch on when Crockett and Dusty just had found out that on my days off I was going up to WWF shows and seeing Sam, and they just totally disapproved of that. They thought that it was treacherous and I was a treason, and that I was stepping over the line because why would I go to like a WWF show? They thought that WWF was probably going to steal me away. Why are we going to put all this time and money into my character when I was just going to leave? So I was fired just like right in the middle of the angle. Like my name was all of a sudden not on the booking sheets anymore. They didn't exactly fire me, but then they quit booking me. It was how they fired you. They just stopped using you. I still have the envelope today. It's in my China cabinet, and there it's going to stay.
And it's empty.
No, I had I asked Dusty, I said, what am I supposed to do? I said, because they at the first they had me carrying an empty envelope to the ring. And I
Right.
said, if a fan grabs this, it's going to look so hokey and so bad, like, oh, she ain't got nothing. There ain't nothing in there. I said, I need to have something in the envelope. So Dusty put a bunch of stuff in the envelope for me to carry so that if someone got a hold of it, there would be something in there. Well, then just a couple of years ago, I saw Dusty at a fan fest, and I'd been asked a question over and over again, like, what was in the envelope? What was in the envelope? And he said, Doll, never tell them. He said, because once you tell them, then they'll quit asking. He says, if you never tell them, they'll always keep asking you what is in the envelope. So to this day, I will not tell what's in the envelope. Dusty told me not to.
That's funny. So when Sam went over to WWE, did they recruit him over, or had he had enough of Crockett and looked into it himself?
It was like a family affair there for a while. For WWE, they had Grizz as an agent. Jake was working. Rockin' Robin was like their women's champion, and then Sam was working, and Sam worked for them for, I guess, off and on for like 4 years, maybe. So there for quite a while, everybody in the Smith family was working for them.
How was the pay for him over there in that time?
The pay was good. It was kind of screwed up. The worst part was when he was working for them, they would have you um, pay for your ticket home. So if you were like in Portland as your last night on a run and you had like 4 or 5 days off to get home, you had to buy your own ticket home. So I went to work for Piedmont Airlines. And then that way he could use my ID and fly home for free or a discounted fare if it wasn't on Piedmont. And that saved us a lot of money. But I thought that was kind of really shitty to treat the guys. Like if you were in Calgary on your last run and you were trying to get to Atlanta, that was an expensive ticket.
Yeah, it still is today.
Right.
Uh, did they ever try and recruit you with how hot you were at the time?
I had actually, Robin, Sam's sister, and myself, we trained up at Nelson Royal's camp for a summer, like 6 weeks. We went up there and worked out in his ring and the horse barn and did weights and the whole thing, hoping to get in there. I was actually at a WWF show where Leilani Kai was at, and Leilani and I are like really good friends. And Sam was like, "Get your gear. Leilani wants to work out with you in the ring." Okay, sure. So I go and I get my gear on, and we're just kind of tussling around in the ring. I had no idea that that was like my tryout. No one smarted me up like, hey, people from WWF are like looking, you might want to, put something into this if you want a job. I was just playing around with Lolani, you know what I'm saying? So I'm really glad it didn't work out because they took Robin instead, and Robin had some really, really good matches with Sherry. And then I'm like I don't want to say like I'm a really big girl, but I'm like 5'10", like 210 pounds in. I mean, I'm a big girl. And for me to work against Sherry or Robin or some of the other girls, it really would have looked bad. And then being a heel, I don't want to be putting people over all the time. So, and then I didn't have to take any bumps. So I'm not hurt to this day. I don't have any injuries. So it really worked out. And then Robin got to be WWF Women's Champion. And I'm very happy with which way it went. It all worked out.
What was the heat between Sam and Robin over? Because I guess they don't talk that too much anymore.
Um, it's with Sam's addiction. I mean, I don't want to like be a tattletale or stooge on anyone. It's kind of like their deal, but everyone knows like Sam has got a drinking problem, and Sam really takes advantage of people's good hearts, and he's really taken advantage of his sister and her generosity. And what a really, there's not a person better in this world than Robin. And Robin has helped a lot of people, and she's really helped Sam a lot, and he's taken advantage of her. And it's she's had enough. Yeah, at a certain point, especially with someone's addiction, you just get to a point of like, it has cost me too much mentally and physically and financially. I'm not going to deal with it anymore. And I'm the same way. I've just had enough with it also.
He seems like he's doing a lot better these days. I know you probably don't talk to him anymore, but he seems like he's been sober for a little while now. So hopefully that's true.
I don't think he's sober anymore. Someone was saying he was buying drunks in Vegas, and I think he's had a DUI since he got out. I just I never understood that whenever Sam left, he went 11 years without seeing his daughters, without phone call, without anything. He was just gone. And then he totaled 7 cars in 3 years through DUIs. His dad kept bailing him out, bailing him out, bailing him out. Well, eventually, from the story that I had heard, was Mothers Against Drunk Driving had gotten his record. And in Louisiana, his dad had a lot of pull and knew a lot of magistrates, knew a lot of judges, and kept getting him out of trouble. Well, when Mothers Against Drunk Driving got his record, they were appalled because he had worked the system to a T. And they had gone and said that if this boy gets in trouble again, we're going to expose everybody. Well, they called his parole officer, and his parole officer said that if you get in trouble again, there's nothing I can do. The wrong people have gotten your record. You're going to be facing some serious time. There's nothing I can do. Well, 2 weeks later, he got busted again for DUI. They pulled him in. The judge says that if you're caught again, you're going to get a mandatory 5-year sentence. There's nothing else we're going to do. You're going to do a 5 year straight. Well, sure enough, it was about 3 months later, he got busted again. I guess he'd been working out with a guy. They'd picked up a 12-pack and were drinking beer on the way back home. They stopped him. It was automatic 5-year sentence. So whenever they put him in jail, about 3 months after he was in jail, Katrina hit. Now, if you're in jail, you're praying every day. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, I'll do it just to get me out of here, get me out of here. Well, when Katrina hit, they let all the nonviolence out. So they let him out of jail. That lasted about a year, and then he was right back in jail again. And he had to do the 5 years straight. He did 5 years. He was doing a lot of offshore work, got out. We all figured that, okay, well, if you've done 5 years in jail, you've probably learned your lesson. He got out. He tried to make contact with the girls and tried to make things right, but it just hasn't worked out. And I wish him nothing but the best, but he needs to do his own thing and leave the rest of us alone, I think.
What happened with his run in WWE? Was that related to substance abuse? Why it didn't last more than 4 years despite the conditions?
Sam, the whole thing was if Sam gained weight, if Sam bulked up, they would have done anything with him because he had that good frame. He was personable. Everybody liked him. They could put him in any gimmick and it would work. And Sam worked his ass off. There's not a person out there that will say that Sam slacked in the ring, because Sam is an excellent hand when it comes to wrestling. takes amazing bumps, just will fly all over the ring for you. Just amazing worker. But he wouldn't work out. And I swear I would feed that boy and just amazing amounts of food. But because he was drinking so much, it wasn't sticking to him. And then whenever we went to the gym, then he'd go over to like the bar and buy one of the big $8 protein drinks and walk around. And sure, he'd spend 2 hours in the gym, but walking around talking to everybody, drinking protein drinks is not how you gain weight. Because I'm over there, I'm working out, I'm using the machines, I'm on the treadmill, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And every time I looked up, he's over talking to somebody. So there's a way to work out, and then there's a way to like walk around the gym drinking a protein drink, and that was his downfall. Was he just didn't gain the 30 to 40 pounds that they were wanting him to gain.
I see. Now, you mentioned you went to Central States with him. Obviously, that was one of Harley Race's territories. How was it working there? I think the pay was low, from what I understand.
It was we were lucky because there was two of us, because Sam and I were together and we had like the main event pay between the two of us. But guys literally starved. It was it was 300 to 600 mile trips every day. You would get to the town, nobody knew, that you were going to be there. Like you'd pull into the convenience store to get something to drink before you went to the show. And like in the Carolinas, if you pulled over to the convenience store, everybody knew who you were. Everybody knew that there was wrestling that night. Everybody knew what time wrestling was on in the afternoon, on Saturday afternoon. But when we went to Kansas City, it was like a ghost town. You'd pull into the town, you wouldn't see any posters, you wouldn't see any advertising. You'd pull into the convenience store, like they'd recognize you from TBS, from seeing you on the cable. But they were like, "There's wrestling tonight," and they're like, "Yeah, it's at the Armory or wherever we were gonna." Oh man, I would have gone. I didn't know. And so then when you go to the venue, the posters are being sold in the concession for 25 cents each. So it was like a big secret. And I'm surprised that we stayed as long as we did. It was awful. It really was. It was like how not to run a territory.
Did you have any stories about Harley Race?
Hmm. Harley was I'd known Harley since I was maybe like 6, 7 years old. And he's like one of the first guys that I remember actually scaring me because of the voice and the tattoo and, smoking cigarettes and, just being like a really scary guy. I remember him like being a little girl, like being a scary, like scaring me.
Now, would you kayfabe when you were like on the road, say at a convenience store, if a fan tried to be nice to you or something, would you still play that baby doll character?
Mm, I actually got in trouble because I signed autographs one time and Tully was like, never sign autographs. So I was instructed for just usually because of my character and being really tough and mean, people like left me alone. I didn't really have too much problem with that. I was very fortunate because everybody was afraid I was going to smack them.
What's your best advice for being a heel for any wrestlers that might be watching this?
There are no heels. I don't know what to tell them because no matter what they do, they want to go out and sell their merch. They don't want to be, nobody wants to be a heel because you don't make the money off of merch. You have to be more in character. They don't want the heat because they don't want the people not liking them. Um, I I don't even know of any heels out there today, that are willing to make the sacrifice that we were doing. Because when you look at it, like Tully didn't make any money off of merch, but the Rock and Roll Express were. Like we didn't have T-shirts and the whole thing. The baby faces did, but we were willing to make that sacrifice because we knew that we were going to get the big Starcade payoff or the big Bash payoff and things like that. I mean, I look at the merch that I had. I've only got two T-shirts out of everything that I've done. I've got two shirts from Crockett because they just didn't do the merchandising on us. If someone's willing to be a heel, number one, don't go out and sell your merchandise, before the matches. Have somebody else sell it for you. And then maybe for a brief amount of time, go out and sign like maybe 5 autographs, and that's it. Be elusive, be a mystery. Don't be out there at intermission next to the baby faces selling your stuff. And there's one pet peeve I have. Oh my God, it drives me nuts. For all of you out there, don't eat at your merchandise table. It's disrespectful to all of us. You're only out there for an hour, 2 hours at a time. And even at FanFest, if you can't go for 4 hours without eating, then maybe that's not for you, because it's just so rude to eat at your table. It drives me friggin' nuts.
And then you have some like the Brian Knobbses of the world that actually drink at their tables too.
Well, would you expect anything else from Knobs? Drinking is different than having a sandwich and lettuce down your chest, or having food laid out on your table. If you're take a swig of beer and put it underneath your, seeing them gonna be so hypocritical on that. I would be disappointed if I didn't see Knobs drinking at his table, I guess.
Now, a fan asked me to ask you this. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but they heard there was a rumor that you were going to be Lex Luger's valet in WWE when he was a narcissist.
No. Luger and I never, whenever they put JJ with Luger in World Class, no, not World Class, with Crockett, or WCCW, I had actually asked to be put with Luger at that time instead of JJ, and Luger was like, no, he wouldn't work with me. So no rumor to that. That's not true at all.
What did you think about Sting on a personal level?
I don't have anything bad to say about him. We didn't really work with him because he was kind of like on a different team than us, because he was like with the young guys and I was like working with the older guys. So it was like Dusty had like team set up, like A team, B team, C team, and Sting was like on a different team than I was.
How did you like? Yes, I understand that. And what about your time in UWF with Bill Watts?
The road trips were friggin' nuts. It was like, it was fun to work the territory, but then driving 600 miles a day was ridiculous. I don't know why they couldn't. It seemed like one day we were in Tulsa, and then we'd be in Baton Rouge, and then we'd be back over in Oklahoma City, and then we'd be in Shreveport, and then we'd be in Amarillo, and then we'd be in Alexandria. And it was just like, can't we like make this a loop and do like 200 miles a day instead of 600 miles a day? The road trips were insane, completely insane.
And how was Watts to work for?
I didn't really, I don't think he liked girls working that much. I think he was kind of like with the Stu Hart, that he liked more of the boys working. We had the cat fights with Journey and myself against Missy and Sunshine, and we were getting over. We only had like 4 or 5 of them, but with the fans, we were really getting over. And then all of a sudden, it quit because Bill didn't want to deal with the girls and didn't want girls working, and it was just like, but the angle is getting over. Why aren't we doing anything? And it was just like Bill didn't want us working.
I
So,
see.
but he was a money and he was a booker. So what are you going to do?
Any favorite match or feud that stands out to you from that territory?
Oh my gosh. With myself or just any, I liked
Well,
it when they
yourself.
had Missy and Eddie and the Gucci purse, and she had so much heat that a fan actually stole her dog. I thought the whole angle with like Missy and Eddie was gold.
Did she get the dog back?
I believe she did, but it took a while before they got it back. I mean, it was like a little prize Pomeranian. Like the fan actually stole her dog.
Wow. Did the other UWF ever try to contact you? The one run by Herb Abrams?
I I remember the name and he might have, but at the time I had just had my daughters and I wasn't going to do any more wrestling or any more road trips or anything at that time because my focus was on my kids and I wasn't going to do anything else but be a mom at that time.
How did you like wrestling for the Global Wrestling Federation?
That was interesting. That was we did that about once a month because I was living down in Baton Rouge and I had my daughter and Micah was only like maybe 5 or 6 months old at the time, and well, she might have been right at a year old. And we were doing that 450-mile trip for like one shot and then back, and it was cool, like with bull pain, and then it was fun to get back in it, but I was so much more focused on having a 1-year-old in the dressing room and what was Micah doing and if she was okay, and it was hard to concentrate when your kid's in the dressing room, and I just had other priorities.
Is it true that you promoted a women's wrestling league in later years in the 90s?
No, that is completely false. Once
Okay.
I quit with Global, I mean, I did a couple of shows with them in like 90, it would have been like 91. And then I got pregnant with Michaela. I didn't do anything until there was a fan fest in Tampa where I drove my girls from Tampa, from Joplin, Missouri to Tampa with Sal Corrente, I think was the one that did the reunion show. And I went to the ring with Jarrett against Tully and Dylan. And that was like maybe 2002, 2003.
Was that the last time that you managed?
That was the first time I had managed in like 10 years because I did the Tampa show and then there was a big fan fest in Ocean no in Maryland. Greg Price did a fan fest and I went up for there and then it was such a big hit and I did so well and everybody was like, "Oh, you need to move down to the Carolinas. You can work. There's a lot of shows and the whole 9 yards." And I actually moved to Carolinas in 2005 so that I could get back into the business. And I've been here ever since. That's 15 years ago.
So you're still doing stuff here and there in the business
Oh
for.
yeah. I did let me see. I Oh my gosh, last year was good. I did the WrestleCon last year was like the first time I did WrestleCon on in April. Then I had the Gathering in Charlotte for T Mart, and then I had WrestleCade, and I had Heroes and Legends. I did like 5 big shows last year, and then
Would you
this year it's kind of all to crap because of the COVID thing.
would you ever consider being an agent or something for, like, let's say AEW, if they were looking for an agent for women wrestlers?
Right now, because I have a 5-year-old that really needs me more than anyone else. If I didn't have the 5-year-old, if I didn't have Ryder and I wasn't married and the whole thing, absolutely I would. But I have a little 5-year-old right now that really, really, really needs me and really adores me, and I love making them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So, um, unless the money was phenomenal and it was like one day here, one day there, and not like what it used to be, I would have to say no. That I have, and I've got a farm. I've got like 40 chickens and a goat and turkeys and a quarter-acre garden and stuff. I mean, I'd love to. I think it would be really cool, and I would love to like if it was a perfect world, I could manage my daughter and we would do the lucha thing. And I always had this deal of doing like La Puta Grande and being the big bad bitch and manage my daughter. But, there's other priorities.
Is your daughter a better heel or face?
I don't know. I was going to say heel, but oh my gosh, she's so pretty. She's one of those that she can do either one because she's so pretty and so everybody loves her. So she's like a perfect baby face, but then she also has that look where she can be a perfect heel too. So it could be either way. It's she's could be either way.
Did you ever work for Tully's dad in Texas?
No, because he was separate than my dad, because my dad worked with the Funks out of the Amarillo office for like the longest time until I was like 12, 13. And then he went with World Class with the Von Erichs. And Tully's dad was Southwest Championship Wrestling, which was a total different promotion. So I worked San Antonio, but I never worked for his dad. And then his dad and my dad were really good friends. So Joe would come up and to our shows and like be a special referee, and we'd all go out to eat afterwards. But that was about it.
How did you get along with Terry and Dory?
Um, oh, they were awesome because their kids were like the same age as my brother and myself. Dory's kids were a little bit older, and then Terry had his two daughters, and it was really cool when the once in a while that we got to go to TV on Saturdays, we got to all sit together, and um, it's kind of like one big family that you see once a year. But Terry and Dory were always really cool. They brought me T-shirts from Japan. I still, in fact, I need to call Terry. I've got Terry's number. I need to call him, and he always, whenever he talks with anyone from Texas, he asks how myself and my brother are doing, and um, just really super, super good guys. Really super good guys.
A fan wanted me to ask you if you had any interactions with Rick Rude over the years.
Hmm. I think I met him like once or twice, but I really didn't know him. I can't, like I never did a road trip with him or traveled with him. I think I like saw him in the airport like twice.
Is it true you were friends with the Hart kids when you were younger, when you were all kids?
That is a true. They actually came down. Um, it was one of them. They called him kayfabe for some reason, but it was Bruce and like three of the brothers came down, and they actually gave me a Canada um, football shirt, a T-shirt.
Oh,
And
CFL?
yeah, they
Peters,
well,
Calgary Stampeders.
maybe because it had the big maple leaf on it. I talked him out of the shirt, but I had a huge crush on Bruce whenever I might have been 11, 12 years old. I remember actually taking pictures of the TV because he was wrestling, and that's how desperate I was. But they came down and were actually training with Dory and Terry, and they spent like maybe 3 weeks, 2 summers in a row, and came down and trained. So I knew them like when I was 11, 12 years old, maybe 12, 13.
Bruce was one of my trainers, but age hasn't been as kind to him. He was definitely a heartthrob in his younger days, but age caught up with him a little bit and maybe too many blade jobs over the years.
Oh well, yeah, I had a huge crush on and I remember like getting the little Instamatic camera and knowing that, he was gonna, like this wrestling show came on at 2 o'clock, like waiting and taking pictures of the TV when he was wrestling.
I think you're actually taller than Bruce too, aren't you?
I I probably was then, I probably am because I'm like 5'10. I think he was only like 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah, that would have been an interesting pair. A fan wanted me to ask you what your favorite time was in the business for you as a performer.
Um, favorite. Oh my gosh. Oh, who's a favorite? Probably like whenever Polly and I were like really the time between the Great American Bash '85 and Starcade with the cage match with Meg. Just the build up. Every week we were building it up more and more. And what's he gonna do with us? What else?
Oh, your sound is going a little bit again.
Okay.
Now it's back.
All right. The I don't know what doing that, but um the time between the Great American Bash 85, when Dusty won me for the 30 days, to the build up to WrestleCade with Magnum, was probably, it couldn't have been any better. Everything made sense. Everybody was like on point. There was so much heat. There was so much back and forth. We did the deal where I dressed up as a security guard and handed the roll of quarters to Tully. Then the following week, Magnum came out in the police outfit and handcuffed me to the rope, and then got Tully, and it was just perfect. It worked out. I mean, it was, there was no better storytelling than right then. It was good.
What did you think of the whole I Quit match that people still talk about to this day?
Perfect. I mean, if there was a perfect wrestling match, if there was a perfect build up to a whole scenario, to a whole angle, it was right then, because the whole match made sense. Everybody had a part. Like, if I wasn't in it, it wouldn't have mattered as much. If Tully had worked with anyone else, it wouldn't have worked. The heat that they had between the two of them, because they didn't like each other back then, in and out of the ring, the animosity that they had, they were each trying to be the best and be the star in Dusty's eyes. And that just, the everything just made sense. There's not a part of that match that goes, oh, they missed that, or that didn't make sense, or why did they do that. It's perfect. The whole buildup of it, it's just, I mean, if there was one of the best wrestling matches ever, that would be it.
Did you find it strange that Magnum ended up marrying Tully's ex?
Yes. Yep, that was kind of wild, especially like hearing the whole story of like how it happened, and the whole, like, it certainly worked out for Tessa. I mean, Tessa's got two awesome dads, and it's certainly playing well with her career and where she's wanting to go with her life. It seems kind of weird, but for everyone, I think it all worked out. I mean, you can't say that, oh, you can't do that, it's not gonna, it's not right. But then it did work. So who are we to judge? And everybody's happy, and Magnum's got two beautiful children out of it, and Courtney's happy, and Tully's happy, and all the kids are happy. So, stranger things have happened, but I can't tell you what.
How did it end up happening? Like, was the relationship already over, I guess, by the time that she switched?
I'm not. I wasn't around, so I'm not quite sure the whole, like, how it worked out. But I think Tully found out that she was dating Magnum when she had Magnum tattooed on her ankle.
Oh boy. And now, of course, Tully, I've seen Tully and Magnum together, and I guess ever since the accident, whatever heat they had probably vanished.
Oh, I don't know. I think there was still a lot of heat after the accident, because that's, a lot of stuff happened after that. I think that through time, and time has a way of healing all wounds. And, if you just have to realize that people go different directions, they may not go the direction that they want you to, especially after a divorce. But, Magnum's good to Tully's kids, and Tully should be happy with that. And it all works out. So.
Do you think the Magnum heat may have had something to do with why Tully never came back to WCW, other than I think one appearance after his WWE run?
Um, I think maybe like being busted for the drugs, like testing positive for the cocaine, put a lot of damper on a lot of that, because at that time it was, um, you know, it was nothing to do it, but then you just don't get caught until he got caught.
And what was your reaction to Magnum's accident?
We were actually in Kansas City at the time and got the phone call, and it was one of those moments in your life that you just can't believe what happened, and especially you can't believe that it happened to Magnum, and that you're thankful that he survived, but then you're also worried about like what is his life going to be like after that, especially when we heard how bad the accident was. Like what was his life going to be after that? And I'm so thankful, that he persevered, and that they had put the collar on him, where they drill your head, and keep you immobile. And he was like, no, we didn't want that. He said, like every day he would just like push his head against the pillow just as hard as he could, because he didn't want to be just completely, immobile. And he says every day it just felt like he got a little bit further. And he says that nobody could tell, but he could tell. But he just kept pushing his head against that pillow, and then got to where he could lift up his head, and then he could sit up. And it was like the little baby steps and the accomplishments that he did that made him go further than anybody. Than all the doctors said that he wasn't ever going to be able to walk, and he proved them all wrong. And now he's out riding four-wheelers with his kids and having a great time.
And another fan question was, were you ever approached about being in Playboy or Penthouse?
Hmm. I had They didn't contact me directly, but Francis Crockett said that they had called their office looking for me. And Frances, knowing me the way that I was just like she would not be interested. And she turned them down for me. And it would have been true. I don't want to disrespect anyone that has done it and saying that no, 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 you shouldn't do it. But I always knew that I would have children, and I never wanted to embarrass my kids that way. Like, I just don't know your mom. And I
Oh
didn't want
God.
that. I'm so much more. I'm very nerdy and very private, and that's for other girls. And other girls are so much prettier, and let them go do it because they're so much better at it than I am. It's go do your thing, and I'll do my thing, and I'll be happy. And it wouldn't have been something for me. It just
Did you ever meet?
I would have looked really good though.
Well, apparently the fans wanted to see it, but Sunny never did Playboy. She did other porn and stuff. Any thoughts on her?
I if I could, she needs to quit. If she wants to do drugs and drink and everything, just don't drive. Just stay where you're at. Just the drinking and driving is what really just irks me to no end, because you're going to hurt someone else other than yourself. And that hopefully this last stint, where I think she was in jail for like 9-10 months, hopefully that's put her back into perspective of what she can actually lose. But I lose a lot of respect for people whenever, it's one thing if you just want to get shit faced drunk and do whatever you want to in your own house. Just don't get out and drive. I have no respect for people that get out and drink and drive. You're stupid. You're absolutely stupid for doing it, and you deserve everything you get.
Yeah, and I think she's got a long list of offenses of doing that. Unfortunately, she hasn't learned. So I hope you're right, and she has learned from this one. And what are your thoughts on Sable?
I don't really. I know who she is, and I guess she was married to Brock, and they've got some kids. But I've never met her, and I don't know Brock or her, so I have no. I know she's gorgeous, and she's done some amazing work in the ring, and that, like with Meryl, she had done like some pretty good matches. But at that time, because my girls were little and they were doing such vulgar stuff with the girls, we just didn't watch, because I didn't want my girls putting together what I did in wrestling with what those girls were doing. I waited until my girls got older, and then they kind of watched whatever they wanted to of my stuff. And my girls could never be embarrassed by what I did. They were like, "Oh, mom, you showed your ass," or I wanted to embarrass my kids in other ways other than that.
And I guess Chyna had a gimmick similar to yours. Of course, she was obviously enhanced by some stuff because females can't get that big naturally. But any
Right.
thoughts on Chyna?
I think it's really sad what she did to get over, the extremes that they had her go through and that she was exposed to. And I don't know how voluntarily that she went into that character. Um, it just seemed like she went into such extremes to get over. And it's sad that I met her one time and she was very, very nice to me and very cordial, but it just she was an icon. I mean, if I had stayed longer in the business, that's what I would have probably, wanted to do with the muscling up and the getting big and everything. But it just seems like she went to such extremes to get over. But that's the way that the WWF and WWE has always been. It's like if 10 was good, 15 was even better. So.
What were some of your best lifts in the gym for, let's say, squats and bench press?
Oh, I see bench press. I wasn't really that strong because my upper body's not that strong. And then when you look at it, like in the '80s, it was all the aerobics and the thongs up the butt and the leotards and the whole thing. So it was more of a different body than what I had. I remember being in the gym, like being the only girl lifting for like a long, long time. Putting actually weights on a rack and lifting. Some of the girls would go over there and do like some of the universal and some of the other machines, but they weren't like actually lifting weights. So I didn't really go for the bulk because that wasn't what you did, and you didn't want to be stronger than the guys. I do remember being at a gym in Lubbock and doing a crunch machine, and I could do the whole rack on the crunch machine, and I was like doing abs, and my daughter was like, "Mom, you're doing all the weights." And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Mom, you're doing all the weights. Those guys are looking at you. You're doing," and I said, "Okay." And then I kind of knew, like, okay, it might be too much, but it's fun. It's good being a big girl.
Did you keep a special diet, or were you blessed with a good metabolism?
Um, I have to, oh gosh, I can't eat what I want. I know that whenever I wanted to like lose weight or like look good for a certain show, I would like, and even now, like whenever, like if I've got a wrestling event come up, I'll watch my weight. I do the Bruiser Brody diet, and that's canned tuna fish, green beans, and rice. And you can eat as much as you want to, but that's the only three things that you can eat are green beans, rice, and canned tuna fish. It
So you
works.
you knew Bruiser Brody, I guess, from the Texas territory.
Yes, and I've gotten to meet his wife, and it was really cool because he had just gotten married whenever he was working West Texas territory, and he was like so happy and so in love, and just so he was just so happy to be able to get married. And he was telling us a story of like whenever he got married that he had the money for the preacher in one pocket and he had his vows in the other, and he got all confused. And whenever he went to go give the money to the preacher, he actually handed the vows to him again instead of the money. And his wife remembered that because I've talked to Barbara since then. That I said, was that true that he actually got the vows switched up and that he handed the vows back to the preacher instead of the money? She's like, oh, yeah, hardly anybody knows that story. And so she thought that was really cool that I would remember that story.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened to him as someone that's been around wrestling dressing rooms all their life?
That was because Tully had told me, and Tully had told me like how bad it was in Puerto Rico, and just that they didn't like the Americans, and especially like with Brody having the reputation of like holding up promoters and the whole thing. It's either like guys are either like he got what he deserved because he did have the reputation of holding up promoters until the very last minute and wanting to get more money, and then like no one deserved to die that way. And it's just I've heard so many stories of like what happened and what led up to it and who was there and what they did and what they didn't do and what they could have done and what they couldn't do. And it was just Bad scene, just really bad scene for everybody.
Did you ever witness any of these incidents he had with promoters where allegedly he'd purposely kill a town or anything like that?
I had heard it, but I didn't have firsthand knowledge, like I wasn't there whenever it had happened. I mean, I guess because like he was working with Amarillo and Lubbock and the territory was that he'd have to face, the promoter at the next town. That I don't think he held anybody up in West Texas. Plus then with my dad would have just gone, go home, I'm not going to use you. So,
Did you have a favorite wrestling commentator?
oh my gosh, a commentator. Be tossed between Gordon Soley and Jim Ross.
Did
Toss
you
up, because I grew up listening to Gordon Soley, but then meeting Jim Ross and his love and knowledge of the business, it would be a flip of a coin between the two.
any thoughts on Bob Caudle?
Well, see, Bob's good too, and everybody puts down David Crockett. Bob and David were great too, so I can't really. Don't make me choose that because I've got too many friends of that. Um, See, Bob was good too, and I still see Bob to this day. And Bob really got us over. And then, like working with David, they were like a perfect team together. So you shouldn't make me choose on that. I can't choose.
Any thoughts on Dusty's kids?
Absolute love all of them. Teal, Cody, Dustin. Um, just really super, super awesome. I believe there's another girl in there, but I know Dustin and Cody just are super, super. And then I remember when Teal was born, how just in love Dusty was. I mean, he just absolutely adored her. So just three very, very special people. And just I'm so glad that they're carrying on Dusty's genes and there's still a little bit of Dusty in the world.
And a fan wanted me to ask you the top three wrestlers you liked working with and the top three you didn't like working with.
Um, Top three would be, oh my gosh. I'd have to put Tully, Jake, and Dusty. I liked working with Flair too. So I get four with that one. And then three that I didn't like. I can't say. I mean, I liked everybody.
That's good. That's more than most wrestlers or valets could say. Did you ever work with Terry Reynolds over the years, or she was a little bit after your time?
I met Alex. Actually, she was Alexandria. She was doing makeup in Georgia at what was it, Center Stage, and I'd gone
Yeah.
down to see everybody. I had my daughter, and I'd gone to and Missy was there, so I remember staying with Miss or hanging out with Missy. And Terry came in and was doing everybody's makeup, and she was just starting to do the Alexandria York character. And I remember like how pretty she was, and I was jealous, and I had like my kid, and I could see like the business had passed me by, but that was the first time I'd met her was like at Center Stage there in Georgia, and she was doing makeup and doing the Alexandria York uh, character.
Are you surprised that she ended up dating New Jack?
Oh wow. Um, I don't know because I didn't know her that well. It just seemed like such an odd pairing because they're like so opposite. Because I really don't know New Jack, so I can't really. I know, and I really don't know her. I know Dustin, but I can't really say because I can't say, oh, would never see that because I don't know them to judge them. You know what I'm saying?
Did you ever work with Dustin in a wrestling capacity?
Not wrestling in a wrestling capacity. I do remember Sam and I going to one of his high school football games there in Charlotte. And then he was driving some of the guys in the golf carts to the rings there at the Bash in '86.
Any favorite memory from your time in Crockett?
Mm. The whole experience, just how over, like going in and working and, like having the dream as a little girl, like watching wrestling. And then, because there wasn't anyone like me at the time. There weren't any ballets, there weren't any like girls, and unless you were a girl in the business, you were wrestling. So there wasn't anyone with like my character that just went to the ring and got heat or put guys over and the whole thing. And the money and being on TV and working with guys that you really like, being the only girl, I think is like the best part of all of it was that for almost a year, I was like seriously the only girl, and it was so cool.
I don't know how closely you follow the wrestling news, but a couple weeks ago, Ronda Rousey made some comments about wrestling being fake and wrestling fans being disrespectful, and she doesn't want anything to do with it. There's still a good chance she'll come back, but what do you think about somebody that kind of was given a huge opportunity, made a ton of money, and now she's publicly insulting a business that she made millions in?
Well, whoever smartened her up is the one to blame for that. I mean, whoever paid her all the money and got her over and put her in the position where she was, where there was no respect in it, then they're the ones that are to blame for it, not her. I mean, who wouldn't want to make a lot of money? And then I guess she was like a big fan of Roddy Piper and the whole thing. Pro wrestling is not for everybody, and it used to be such a closed circle and nobody knew, and it was like, the term kayfabe actually meant something. Now that everybody knows and everybody has an opinion and everybody thinks that, the angles, what angles should get over and what gets over and what doesn't get over, they have no clue what it was really like. And that, I mean, I kind of hate to this day, like telling like how I was smartened up in the business, because it's kind of against everything that I was brought up as. But like everybody knows, so it's just spoiled for and I think with her, she doesn't have any respect for it. I mean, so how is she going to treat it with respect when she didn't have any respect for it to begin with?
And I think her matches were pretty much all planned out because she was kind of an outsider. So it's not like she had to like work her way up to the top and actually learn how to wrestle on the fly or anything like that.
And see, I've never seen her work. I know that I really like Charlotte Flair. Out of all the girls that are working now, I really have a lot of respect for her because she was brought up into it, that she knows. And I think that out of everyone in the business, with a girl wise, that she truly respects it and she knows what it came from. I don't know so much about the other girls because I mean, I watch, but I don't watch as much as I can. And with the girls, it seems like they're working more like the guys than like girls should work. And it's kind of disappointing because it's just like watching another guy match.
Did you see that Saudi Arabia girls match that they had not too long ago where they had to wear like,
Oh, the head to toe, they were covered up.
yeah,
I was more interested of like how they weren't able to get out of the country. That seemed like more of the drama than anything else, of like being on the plane, then not being on the plane, then being on the plane and being holed up in the hotels. And are we going to be put in front of a firing squad? And that
yeah.
seemed to be more drama than anything else.
Do you think WWE's association with a place like Saudi Arabia hurts their popularity at all? Because a lot of people are turned off by some of the stuff that goes on there. It's very the way they treat women isn't very nice, to say the
Well,
least.
yeah. I mean, if you're gay, they throw you off the roof, and if you cheat on your husband, they throw you off the roof and kill you in the square. And um, I think it's a very bold move, and that you have to go with the money. Um, Vince is going to go where he's going to make money, whether it's here or it's on the moon or if it's in the middle of hell. Vince is going to book a show if he can make some money on there.
As someone that's been in the business as long as you, we're seeing that wrestling's popularity is really declining lately, especially now the lockdowns kind of accelerated that decline with these empty arena shows. What would you do to kind of give wrestling a boost again?
You see, it's such a catch 22 because you keep the momentum going with like the empty house shows, or do you show old stuff and hope that you can keep people going? It I was thinking, like, what would my dad have done at this time? Without having any house shows, like for months at a time, we would have lost everything because you've got to keep that momentum going. And until you can get house shows with people actually in the crowds, it's it seems like it's almost like useless because you've got to have that crowd, you've got to have that reaction. Otherwise, it's just a gymnastics routine. To me, it's like it's just it's really hard to watch, and I don't care who it is, unless you've got a crowd there and you can feed off that crowd and get that pop and give the fans what they want and then not give them what they want and kind of tease back and forth. It's hard. I wouldn't want to be in the position they're at now. I just wouldn't.
And I had a few fans that wanted me to ask you if you do autographs for people, if there's a website or something where they can get a signed picture from you.
Absolutely. If they hit me up on my Facebook, which is just Nicola Roberts, Nickla, and then Roberts, I do something really cool. I don't ask for actual money, but I ask for a donation either to Children's Miracle Network. There's St. Jude's, or there's a little boy down in Fayetteville that has cancer. If they would donate some money towards any one of those charities, I would be happy to mail them autographed 8x10.
And do you have a fan club or anything? Another fan wanted
I
me to ask
don't.
you.
I really don't. I do a lot of Twitter and I do a lot of Facebook, and a lot of my stuff, I guess about 80% of my stuff is political because I'm really a Trump fan, and I'm really supporting him. And then about 20% is wrestling, and then I like post a lot of the old matches and old pictures and stuff like that. My Facebook's really pretty cool place.
And what is your Twitter address if people want to find you on there?
It's under Nicola Bird, I believe, because my Facebook is under Nicola. Actually, if you pull up Nicola, Nickla, I am the only one. So if you want to find me, just Google that and you'll find out how to get to me.
So you're obviously a supporter of Trump, as you said.
Yes.
Um, what do you think his chances are of being reelected?
I think, considering that with Biden, I don't see how that someone can vote for Biden, but then I also voted for Trump because I couldn't see how anyone could vote for Hillary. I think it's going to be tough. And I think that he's got a lot of work to go because a lot of people just don't like Trump because they don't like Trump. But Trump is actually the first president in my lifetime that's actually helped my family in a political way. My husband cut steel, and with the tax cuts that he did at the first of his presidency, it put a lot of money in our pocket. He also got several raises. They bought new equipment. It was really going really well. I mean, if you wanted a job, there were so many jobs out there. Trump is one of those people that he wants to succeed so much that it really makes people mad because they don't think that he's sincere. But Trump, honestly, I think wants to be the best president ever. and that he'll do anything he can for us. And it just rubs people the wrong way because he tries so hard to be number one, and people don't like that.
I see. And obviously, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame too, so that's another
Absolutely.
reason why I think
And
most
you know
wrestlers
what's
like him.
cool is that I've talked to some of the guys that have actually worked shows with him, and this was back several years ago when he was doing this. And they said that he was such a good guy, that he was so down to earth, and he bought stuff for people and was just went out of his way to do good and to get over, and that they were sold from him from the very start from his WWE work. So one day I'll get to meet you, Mr. Trump. Shake your hand.
And the fans also wanted to know if you had any Jim Cornette stories.
Oh Lord. All right, I'll give you one story and then I gotta get out of here because I gotta start supper for my family.
Sounds good.
Jim Cornette. Okay. There was, and it's true, when he says that I dislocated his jaw, absolute truth. Because we had the finish and it was in Raleigh. And in Raleigh, the dressing rooms were like forever back of the back. And it seemed like it was like a heck of a walk to the ring. Well, when you've got 20,000 people on the floor trying to keep you from going to the ring because you're baby faced, and I'm trying to make it to the ring so that I can be on the spot. So when he comes around the corner, I can smack him. It took me forever to get there. So he's like making laps around the ring, waiting for me to get there. Whenever I get there, I'm like super excited and I want to get over and I want it to look good. And instead of like waiting for him to turn around because I didn't have the timing right on him, I I punched him really hard on the back of the head. And I did. I mean, it was just one of those boom, just popped him and I turned around and left. And I remember Bubba like looking like, doll, you hit him. You really hit him. But whenever he says that I hit him, yes, the couple of times that I hit him, I actually really hit him really hard.
Wow.
Jim, I'm sorry, but you know what? We're still talking about it 35 years later. So obviously it got over.
And one quick question, Charlotte Flair or Tessa, who would you rather manage?
Oh, Lord. Oh, my gosh. Um, mm, 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 mm. I don't know because there's so many. Because Charlotte and I, because everyone thinks, I don't want to say everyone, some people think that I'm Charlotte's mom because we favor each other. And then Tessa, because she would be such a good heel. Wow, that's out of all the questions I've been asked in the past 5 years, that's probably the best question I've ever been asked. I couldn't tell you because there's so many good points on each one. Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know. What do y'all think? I would have to turn it back to y'all and say, what would you think?
I would personally say I'd rather see you with Tessa just because I think Tessa's a better heel.
She's a good heel and she's not afraid to. So yeah, I mean, it's shoot, yeah, if they'd let us heel, let's go.
Well, thanks a lot for catching up with us and being so generous with your time answering all of our questions. I'm glad to see you're doing well and you're one of the wrestlers that have succeeded after getting out of the business. And hopefully this lockdown ends soon and you can get back to normal.
Oh yeah, I mean, it wasn't always easy because being a divorced mom with two daughters and like working and supporting them, and it's been rough a couple of times. I mean, it's I've worked really hard, and I've got a really good husband, and got a little 5-year old now, and my daughters are doing really well, and um, yeah, I'm in a really good spot. I really am. Thank you so much. And thank you
And
for remembering me. I mean, I can't say that enough. Thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart for remembering what I did.
And just to close this off, your daughter, Samantha Starr, let's say Charlotte was the NXT champion or the WWE Women's Champion, and Samantha was getting a title shot. what would you tell Charlotte if you had to do a promo on Samantha's behalf for Charlotte?
Oh Lord. Just Charlotte, my dear, you may have Flair as your daddy, but Samantha Starr, his baby doll, is her mother. And I'm 10 times better than your dad ever was.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.